Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I'll be painting a landscape. It's going to be a cloudy sky in the background and a couple of roses in the foreground. So before I start, I have already primed the canvas in neon pink because there's going to be like white for this background. So white on white will kind of just wash out. So I always prime the canvas before I paint it. So now what I'm doing is I'm painting white over it with a little bit of ivory white, and on the top part I'm painting it in coal gray, and on the right I'm mixing cobalt blue with sky blue and white to get this very pale blue, and I'm just kind of like blending it all in together. Because these colors are pretty light, it takes a while to kind of develop the layers, so I think you have to go through about 5 layers and then let the paint dry. And then today I'm painting over it again with, this is probably like the 6th layer, then you start to see the colors coming through. So I'm using a flat white brush and I'm just adding more coal gray on top, and then now I'm taking a wool brush to sort of just blend all the paint together. You get this kind of a more softer blended sort of background. And then once that is done, I'm going to use another smaller sized wool brush to roughly create the shape of the clouds that I want to kind of fill up the sky with in deep gray, which is like a darker shade of gray. Right now it looks pretty rough, but what I'm trying to do is just try to map out the flow of the clouds. I wanted this to be a bit more dramatic, so darker clouds on top, and then at the bottom it's going to be like lighter shades of clouds gradually going darker towards the middle and on the right. Once I've mapped it out, I'm also going to leave a little bit of space in between so that the color of the sky can shine through between the clouds. So anyway, once that is done, right now I am taking a very old frayed brush. It's a little bit smaller, but it's easier to blend, and I'm going to slowly go in and kind of like smoothen all these patchy looking patches of paint into something a little bit more blended with the cloud-like texture. So I'm also adding pearl white, which is this more metallic shade of white in between the clouds to give it a little bit of shimmer. And then for the parts where it's bluish, I also continue to emphasize a bit of the paint so that it sort of glows through in between the clouds, and I continue to blend by moving my paintbrush in this circular motion to just get the color right. So I go from light to dark, and then around the dark clouds I just add a little bit of lighter shades of gray in between, and I continue to blend it. If I'm being completely honest, I think this whole part here is purely intuitive. There's no like fixed step to do it because the clouds are just really random looking. So you just need to go into follow your intuition on which parts you want to blend, which parts you want it lighter, and then just apply the same technique to get your desired look. I would say that this part required the most patience because I had to keep going in again and I wasn't satisfied, and you just keep going and blending and blending and blending, darkening where you want to darken and lightening where you darken. And this part, this zoomed closed up shot, was probably like my 4th layer going over it just to try to get the colors right. And I continue to add a bit more Payne's gray, which is like the darkest shade of gray on top, to add a bit more dramatism to the clouds, just to give it a bit more of a rainy day kind of look. And I think this was when I'm finally calling it a day. So I just wanted to add a little bit more highlights in pearl white. You can't see it here, but the shimmer of the pearl white really adds a dimension to the overall piece. And I continue to blend it in the middle in that circular motion. Once we're done with the clouds, we're going to move on to the next part. So right now I'm using an angular brush, and I'm just going to roughly draw the shape of grass, some tall, some long, and I'm going to just get the shape of it and fill up most of the blanks. And then right now for the second step, I'm going to properly paint over it with a fine liner brush in size 000, and I'm going to paint it in olive green, Mighty's green, and also Van Dyck brown, and also meat green. So you get a variety of grass. And I'm going to try and cover the bottom as much as possible to give it a fuller look. And on the top part, I'm going to kind of tilt the grass in different angles and a little bit thinner so it looks a bit more natural. Once the grass seems full enough, I'm going to add more density to it by painting a few more leaves and add more foliage. So I'm going to paint the leaves in dark green, then I'm going to give it a bit of highlights by mixing meat green with lemon yellow. And then I'm going to paint more grass over it and behind it so it looks a little bit more natural. I think the key to painting foliage, like wild foliage, is to build it layer by layer until it looks full enough. So I also want this to have an uneven trimmed look, so some parts are gonna be a bit taller and some parts are gonna be a bit shorter. But the main point is to cover as much ground as I can, but still allowing the background to be visible. Once that is done, I'm going to freestyle and draw a couple of roses because this is going to be the highlight of this whole painting. I'm going to paint the outline of the roses first in portrait tone. You can use any other color, but this seems to be able to shine through this color palette the most. And then I'm going to paint red and color the petals over this sketch that I've drawn. I find that by drawing out your rose first and then individually painting the petals instead of painting the whole shape of it and then going into the lighter color to create petals, this provides a bit more of clarity in the overall painting of your roses. So what I usually do is I tackle the easiest part first, which is the outer layer of the petals and the biggest space to paint with. So I start by painting the darker shade of red here, which is crimson red, and then I add it with a bit of blue so you get a very dark shade of maroon, and then I slowly shade it to scarlet, and then at the edges for the brightest color of red I use vermilion. Then I slowly make my way to the middle of the rose, and then the whole process just looks a bit more easier once you get the flow of it. So here's the close-up shot of the shaded petals, and in the middle will be the darkest, and then I shade it by using crimson, and I slowly add scarlet, and I just continue to blend it with this size 000 paintbrush. I would say that the easiest way to paint this is to take it as if you're just using a color pencil. Paint it the same way that you would use a color pencil, and then it will seem a lot easier. Okay, next we're going to add leaves to these roses, and it's going to be an even lighter shade of green, so we're getting lighter as we come forward. So once you add all these leaves and all these flowers, then the foliage in front will look dense enough. Anyway, I hope you find this tutorial useful. This is pretty much the last step already. Do I like this painting? Honestly, I'm just kind of like so about it. I haven't really painted landscape in a long time, so I might be a bit rusty, but I do like how the red roses pop up in front compared to the darker background. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Goodbye!